The seat next to me on the train was the last thing I expected to change anything. I had taken the 742 Metra into the loop every weekday for 3 years. Same car, second from the front, same window seat on the left side. I knew which doors aligned with the platform exits. I knew which conductors punched tickets without making eye contact, and which ones wanted to talk about the weather. I had it down to a system, and systems were the thing I was best at. That Tuesday in October, the train was delayed 18 minutes due to a signal issue near Ogilvy. I stood on the platform at Elmhurst in the cold with my hands in my coat pockets, watching the progress bar on the Metra app not move. By the time the train came, the car I usually sat in was full. I walked 2 cars back and found a window seat, sat down, put my bag between my feet, and looked at my phone. A woman sat down next to me, a stop later. I did not notice her right away. I was reading an email from a client who had changed the scope of a project without mentioning it until the invoice stage, which was the kind of thing that made me read the same sentence 4 times without absorbing it. Then I felt the small shift in the seat beside me and looked up without meaning to. She was already looking straight ahead. Brown hair pulled back loosely, a dark green jacket, a canvas tote on her lap with the corner of a thick paperback sticking out. Not reading it, just holding the bag with both hands like she was used to carrying things. I went back to my email. She pulled out the book and opened it somewhere in the middle. I caught the cover when she shifted it slightly. A collection of short stories. I could not read the author's name. The train moved. I finished the email. I started a new one and stopped halfway through the first sentence, because I did not actually know what I wanted to say to this client. I closed the app and looked out the window at the gray October sky and the backyards of houses going past. Is this bothering you? I looked over. She was holding the book at an angle, the spine tilted slightly toward me. Sorry. The book. You keep glancing at it. I thought maybe the light was hitting it wrong. No, I said. I was just trying to read the author. She looked at the cover, then back at me. Alice Munn that. Most people don't, actually. She turned a page, but not like she was going back to reading. More like she was deciding something. She's worth knowing. I did not have a good answer to that, so I said the honest one. I haven't read much short fiction. What do you read? Lately, just emails. That made her smile. It was quick and small, and she looked back at her book almost immediately. But it happened. I went back to my window. The train slowed for the next stop. A few people got off, nobody replaced them, and the car got quieter. Outside, a gas station sign flashed past, then a park with empty benches. When I got off at Ogilvy, I did not look back. That was not the kind of thing I did. But on the escalator up to the street, I found myself thinking about the way she had said, worth knowing, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. It was a small moment. The kind that disappears before lunch. Except, it did not. I thought about it during my 9 a.m. call. I thought about it eating a sandwich at my desk. On the way home, I took the same car I always took, and sat in my usual seat, and the train was quiet and ordinary, and I could not explain why something felt slightly off about all of it. The next morning, I told myself I was just going to ride the train. I took the 742. I sat 2 cars back. She was not there. I tried again Thursday. Nothing. Friday was the same, a full car. Strangers, the usual sound of wheels on track and someone's podcast leaking from their earbuds 2 rows up. I got to work and sat at my desk and opened my emails and felt faintly ridiculous. The way you do when you realize you have been hoping for something you never said out loud. I did not go back the following week. I took my normal car, sat in my normal seat, and got back to the system. Then on Wednesday of that week, the signal issue happened again. Same delay, different day. I walked 2 cars back because my usual car was packed, and I wanted a seat. Not because I was looking for anything. I told myself that clearly. She was in the 3rd row from the door. Same green jacket, different book this time, same canvas tote. She had the book open on her knee and a coffee in her other hand, a paper cup with a cardboard sleeve. And she was reading for real this time, not deciding. I sat one row behind her, across the aisle. Close enough that I could have said something. Far enough that I did not have to. She got off at my stop. I noticed because I almost didn't stand up in time. I watched her move to the doors and I stood and got off behind her, a full car's worth of people between us. By the time we hit the escalator, I lost her before the top. I stood on the sidewalk outside Ogilvy for a second, feeling the October wind off the river, and the general stupidity of the situation. I did not know this woman. I knew her jacket color and her reading taste and that she took the 742 from somewhere west of the city. That was it. I went to work. That afternoon, for no specific reason I could name, I looked up the Alice Munro collection on my phone during lunch. I ordered it. It came Thursday. I read the first story Thursday night and sat with it for a while after, the way you do when something is better than you expected. The following Monday was cold in a new way. That particular November cold, that means winter has stopped being polite. I wore my heavier coat and got to the platform early. The train came on time. I walked 2 cars back before I had finished deciding to. She was there, same row as the first time. Window seat, green jacket now with a gray scarf. She was looking at her phone with her bag on her lap, and she did not look up when I sat down across the aisle. I had the Alice Munro collection in my bag. I took it out. She glanced over. Not for long. Then she looked again, actually stopped and looked. I read the first 4 stories, I said, because saying nothing felt worse. She looked at the book, then at me. She was quiet for a second like she was checking something. Which one got you? The third one, the Peace of Utrecht. Yeah, she nodded once, like I had passed something without being told it was a test. That one takes a little while to settle. It's been 3 days and it's still settling. Her expression shifted. Not a full smile, something more like attention. I'm Thea, she said. James. She looked back at her window. I looked at mine. The train moved. Outside, the city came toward us in pieces. Industrial rooftops and water towers and the brown geometry of November trees. What do you do? She asked. Not right away. A few minutes in, like she had been thinking about whether to ask. I run a small consulting firm, operations and process for mid-sized companies. Adi, that sounds like a job that's hard to explain at parties. It's a job I usually don't bring up at parties. What do you bring up? Mostly I ask people questions, so you can avoid answering. Mostly. She looked at me sideways. That's honest, at least. What do you do? I'm a structural engineer. She said it the same way you say your own name. Just a fact. Infrastructure mostly. Bridges. Drainage systems. Underpasses. That sounds like a job people ask a lot of questions about. They ask 2 questions. Either, how do you know when a bridge is safe, or have you ever seen one fall down? Have you? No. And I intend to keep it that way. I almost said something about that being reassuring, but it would have landed flat. Instead I asked what she was reading now and she held up the book. A novel I had not heard of. She told me the author was from Minnesota and wrote about people in small towns, in the way that made you feel like you had grown up there. The train slowed for the loop. People started gathering their bags. Same car? Tomorrow? I said. She considered that for exactly 1 second. I'm on the 742. So am I. She picked up her tote and stood. Then I guess we'll see. That was how it started. Without a plan, or so I believed. We rode together most mornings after that. Not every day. Some days she was in a different car, or she got on at a different stop, or I was running late and just made it as the doors closed. But when we were both in that second-to-last car at the same time, we sat together. It became a quiet kind of given. I learned things in pieces. She lived in Oak Park. She had moved there from Portland 4 years ago for a position at an engineering firm downtown. She ran on weekends. Long distances. Nothing competitive. Just the kind of running you do. Because you need somewhere to put your thoughts. She had a sister in Tucson who called every Sunday and talked for 40 minutes without needing much in return. She read constantly and remembered what she read in a way that was almost annoying. Once I mentioned something I had read about decision fatigue, and she told me the original study, the researcher, the year, and the main criticism of the methodology, all without looking it up. I told her that was unsettling. She said she had always been like that. She said it without pride, like being good at something did not mean you had to perform it. One morning she noticed I was quieter than usual. I had a presentation that afternoon that I had been half dreading for 2 weeks. A pitch to a company that could double our firm's revenue, or not. My business partner had put the whole thing on me because he was managing another client emergency. "You're reading the same page," she said. I looked down. She was right. "Big meeting today? Good big or bad big?" "Unclear until about 3 o'clock. She was quiet for a moment. "You know what you're doing," she said. Not cheerfully. Not the way people say it when they want you to feel better. The way you say something because it's accurate. I looked at her. "How do you know that?" "Because you've talked about your work a few times, and you always know exactly where the problem is before you say what the solution is. That's not something people fake." I did not know what to say to that, so I just nodded and looked back out the window. But the presentation went well. Better than well. We got the client. The first time we made plans outside the train. It was her idea, though she made it sound like logistics. "There's a talk at the Chicago Architecture Center next Thursday," she said one morning. "It's about load distribution in historic renovation." Sounds dry, probably isn't. Are you asking if I want to go? I'm mentioning it exists. Because you think I'd be interested. You might be. Okay, I said. I'm interested. She almost smiled. It starts at 7. We met outside the building on Michigan Avenue. She was already there when I arrived. Which I was starting to understand was just how she moved. Through the world. She was 5 minutes early. To everything. Not anxiously. Just as a basic form of respect for time. She had changed from her work clothes into dark pants and a charcoal sweater, and she looked like herself, in a way that was hard to put into words. Just exactly like herself. The talk was good. Better than good. The engineer presenting had worked on a renovation of a 1920s railroad terminal in Cincinnati. And she talked about the gap between what the original designers had understood about load and what a century of use had actually done to the structure. Thea asked 2 questions from the audience. Both of them were better than anything I would have come up with. After, we walked south along the river. The November air was cold enough to see our breath, and the lights from the buildings were making the water look almost warm. "You knew everyone in that room," I said. "I knew 2 people. You spoke to 6. I'm not bad at talking to people when I know what we have in common." "What do you have in common with strangers?" "Usually the thing that brought them to the same room." I thought about that. That's a good system. "It's not a system," she said, which was the first time she sounded slightly sharp about something. "It's just paying attention." I held my hands up once. She looked at me for a second, and the sharpness. "Sorry. People call it a system when they think it's calculated. It's not. I'm just actually interested." "I believe you," I said. She looked at the river. "Most people don't." We stopped at a place on Randolph Street for a drink. It was loud inside, and we ended up at a high top in the back where we could actually hear each other. She ordered a glass of Malbec. I ordered the same. She raised an eyebrow. "I don't know wine," I said. "That was my wine. You probably have good taste." She laughed. A real one, short and surprised. It changed her face in the same way. Good news changes a room. There and then gone, but you feel it for a while after. We stayed for 2 hours. We talked about the talk. Then about the city's infrastructure generally, which she knew a lot about. and explained without making it feel like a lecture. We talked about what made a place feel permanent. I told her I had grown up in Naperville and always felt the pull of the city without fully understanding why until I actually moved there at 24. She said she understood the pull but did not romanticize it. Cities are just a lot of people's problems stacked on top of each other, she said. They're impressive when they work. You have a very structural way of seeing things. You say that like it's a criticism. I say it like it's interesting. She looked at me over her glass. It can be both. Outside after, we stood at the corner where our directions split. The wind was coming off the lake and I had my hands in my pockets, and she had her scarf pulled up a little. Good evening, she said. Yeah, really good. She nodded once. Train tomorrow? Same car. Good. She turned and walked toward the CTA entrance, and I stood there for a second in the cold, before I figured out which direction I was going. Over the following 3 weeks, the evenings continued. A gallery opening in River North, she mentioned. Offhandedly, which turned out to be a friend of hers, showing large format photographs of industrial sites. A Sunday afternoon walk along the 606 trail, where we talked for 2 hours, and I drank a terrible gas station coffee, because it was the only option, and she did not let me forget it. I started to feel like I understood her. Not completely. She kept things close in a specific way, not hidden, just private. She would talk about her work in detail, and then say almost nothing about her own history. I knew she had been in a long relationship that ended before she moved to Chicago, but I knew it only from one sentence she said once. And she did not open the door again, so I did not walk through it. I was not pushing, but I was aware that every morning on the train and every evening we spent somewhere in the city, I wanted to know more. One Saturday she asked if I wanted to walk around the Green City Market before they closed for the season. It was early December, cold and bright. We moved through the stalls and she stopped to talk to a vendor she apparently knew from buying produce. There for 2 years, a retired postal worker from Evanston, who also grew heirloom tomatoes which were gone for the year. But he had winter squash, and she bought 2 without negotiating the price. I bought a jar of honey from a woman who kept bees in her backyard in Pilsen. Thea looked at the jar. Do you cook? She asked. Enough to survive. That's not a yes. I make 3 things well. What are they? Pasta. Eggs. One soup that my mom would disown me for telling anyone is from a recipe I found online. What kind of soup? It's a beef and barley thing. It is very good. She looked at me for a second. You could make it sometime. I held the jar of honey. Was that an invitation to your kitchen, or are you just curious about the soup? I'm curious about the soup, she said. But yes. That Friday evening, I went to her apartment in Oak Park with groceries and made the beef and barley soup in her kitchen, while she sat at the counter with a glass of red wine, reading a magazine, and commenting occasionally on my knife work, which she said was technically fine but inefficient. I told her she could help. She told me she would make it worse. I said I doubted that. She said she was not allowed near open flames, after an incident she declined to describe. The soup was good. She said so without overselling it. We ate at her kitchen table and talked about nothing consequential. And it was one of the easiest evenings I could remember having with anyone. After dinner she washed the dishes and I dried them, which she said was not necessary and which I did anyway. When the last one was put away, we stood in the kitchen for a moment. The apartment was quiet. Outside her window, the Oak Park street was dark and still, a few inches of early December snow on the parked cars. You don't have to take the train back tonight, she said. No challenge in it, no game, just the sentence. Okay, I said. She found me a spare toothbrush, which I later decided to find funny. In the morning she was up before me, and when I came into the kitchen, she had 2 coffees made, and was standing at the window in wool socks, watching the snow. She handed me a mug without turning around. Sleep okay? She asked. Really well, actually. The couch is more comfortable than it looks. I looked at her. She looked at me over her shoulder and something shifted. Not the moment, just the honesty in it. Thank you for dinner, she said. Technically, it was your dinner in my kitchen. But still. Same time Monday? I asked. 7:42, she said. I believed her. Monday the train was on time. Her seat was empty. I told myself she was at a different door, caught the wrong car, maybe running late. I watched the doors at every stop. She did not appear. Tuesday, same thing. I sat in our car and drank my coffee, and stared at the seat across the aisle, and answered 2 work emails without thinking about them. By Wednesday I had started to replay things. Not the dramatic moments. The small ones. The way she said, "I'm curious about soup but yes." The way she handed me the coffee without asking how I took it. The way she had been exactly right about the Monroe story, about the presentation, about things I had not expected anyone to be right about. I wondered if I had read it wrong, if the whole thing had been exactly what it looked like to her and nothing more. Dinner, an easy evening, no promises made. She was a precise person. She did not say things she did not mean. Maybe same time Monday had just been a pleasant way to say goodbye. But it did not feel like that, and I was tired of being reasonable about it. Thursday at noon, my phone buzzed, no preamble. Just an address in the West Loop and a time. 7 Clay. The name of the restaurant was Montevere. I stared at the message for a while. Then I typed back, "I'll be there." She was already seated when I arrived, at a small table along the wall, a glass of water and a bread basket in front of her. Her hair was down, which I had not seen before. She looked composed. She also looked composure was costing her something tonight. "Hi," I said. "Hi." She waited for me to sit. I handled this badly. That was not what I had prepared for. I had prepared for something smoother. An explanation that sounded airtight. "You went quiet," I said. "I know, after Sunday, I know." The waiter came, and we ordered food without reading the menu carefully. When he left, Thea set both hands flat on the table. "I am very good at the parts of my life I can predict," she said. "Work, structure, process, systems." She paused. "People are harder. I'm not asking you to have me figured out. I know you're not. That's almost the problem." She looked at me steadily. "After you left Sunday morning, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. And I realized I was trying to find the part of this that was going to go wrong, where the load was going to exceed the capacity. That's a very engineering way to fall for someone." Her expression flickered, not offended. "Close to something else. I'm not good at things I can't calculate." "Is that why you went quiet?" "Partly." She looked down at her water glass, then back up. "And partly because there's something I should have told you earlier." Something shifted in my chest before I knew what was coming. "What?" I said. She drew in a slow breath. "The first morning on the train. The delayed 7:42. That was not a coincidence, for me. I waited. I knew who you were before I sat down next to you." The restaurant kept moving around us. Glass is clinked. Someone laughed 2 tables over. I sat very still. "What does that mean?" I said. "Your firm was in a report I read about mid-market operations consulting in the Midwest. You were cited specifically, your name, the firm name. I looked you up." She said it evenly. "Your LinkedIn. Some articles. A panel discussion you were on. I saw you were based in the suburbs west of the city, and you knew." "I took the Metra." "I did not know that. But I took a chance." She paused. I had been wanting to find a moment to introduce myself. I thought if I found the right setting it would feel natural. I looked at her. "The signal delay." "I did not plan the signal delay," she said. "But when I saw you get on 2 cars back, yes. I sat down next to you on purpose." The whole first morning rearranged itself in my head. The way she had not been reading, not really. The way she had looked up at exactly the right angle when I glanced at the book. The 2 questions she had asked, and the way she had waited just long enough before answering mine. "You wanted to meet me for a professional reason," I said. Initially, she held my eyes. My firm has been exploring whether to bring in an outside operations consultant. Your name came up more than once. I thought, if I met you informally first, I'd have a better sense of whether it would be worth pursuing. And then, she was quiet for a moment. And then you read the Monroe book, and you asked what I do in a way that was actually curious and not performative. And I realized fairly early that I was not thinking about the consulting question anymore. When? I asked. The Architecture Center, she said. When you said worth knowing back to me without realizing you were doing it. I had not realized I was doing it. She had noticed. You could have just told me, I said. I know. We've been spending time together for 2 months. I know that too. I looked at the breadbasket, the table, the window. She sat very still across from me, not trying to fill the silence, which was the most Thea thing possible, and somehow made it harder to stay inside the anger. My father spent his whole career trusting that being good at his job was enough, she said. He never positioned himself, never calculated the introduction or the timing. He kept thinking work would speak for itself. She pressed her fingers together slowly. He was right about the work. He was wrong about everything else. At 53 he got passed over for the 3rd time, and I watched him reckon with that for years. I looked at her. I decided young that I would not leave things to chance, she said. Especially the ones that mattered. And I mattered, I said. As a professional contact. At first. She did not flinch from it, and then differently. And I should have told you differently when it changed. The food arrived. Neither of us moved immediately toward it. Outside on the West Loop Street, the December night was clear, sharp, very cold. I told her things, too. I told her I had walked into that car the 2nd time knowing exactly why, and that I had spent 2 weeks arguing with myself about it before I stopped arguing. I told her work had been feeling increasingly like a room I had decorated someone else's way. That I was good at it, and starting to wonder if good at it was the whole story. She listened. Once she put her hand over mine for a moment, then she pulled it back, like even that was more than she had pre-approved for herself. Outside afterward, we stood on the sidewalk under the cold winter stars, the restaurant light warm behind us. A cab idling at the corner. I need a couple of days, I said. Thea nodded. No negotiation. You should have them. She walked to the corner, and I watched her until she turned onto the next street. Then I got in the cab. For 2 days I did the ordinary things. I went to work. I sat through a client check-in that required 15% of my attention. I ate lunch at my desk. I walked home on Thursday night, through the first real cold snap of December, and stood outside my building for a few minutes. Because the cold air was useful. I kept coming back to the same 2 things. The first was the calculated beginning. She had picked a seat, opened a book she was not really reading. And let me think the whole thing was accidental. That was not nothing. I did not want to dress it up because she was good at conversation, and her eyes had a way of making you feel like the room had gotten quieter. That was exactly the kind of reasoning I needed to be careful with. The second, what is everything after? She had closed her laptop the morning I sat down. She had remembered the client meeting I mentioned once. She had said, "You know what you're doing," not to comfort me, but because she meant it. And I had felt the difference. She had stood at her kitchen window in wool socks, handing me a coffee before I asked for it. She had told me the truth at a table in the West Loop, when she could have said nothing and I would never have known. That last part would not leave me alone. She had chosen to tell me. Not because I had figured it out or pushed her into a corner, because she thought I deserved to know, even when it might cost her everything. On Saturday afternoon, I texted her, bookmarks. 1 hour. It was the name of the independent bookstore in Logan Square, where she had mentioned buying most of her books. I did not know if she would come on an hour's notice. I knew she would come on time if she came at all. She was there before me, standing in the section near the back where they kept the short story collections, a book already in her hand, reading the inside flap like she was somewhere else. She looked up when I came around the corner. She put the book back carefully. "Hi," she said. "Hi." I looked at the shelf behind her for a second. Alice Munro was there. 3 editions. "The beginning was dishonest," I said. "Yes. It made me question what was real and what was staged." She nodded. She did not offer a defense. What was staged was the first morning, the position in the car, the book angle, the introduction. "Yes," she said again. "And after that?" She looked at me with the same directness she had used the night. She sat down next to me, except now I knew what was behind it. Nothing. Not one thing after that. The architecture center talk. I genuinely wanted to go. I mentioned it because I genuinely thought you'd be interested. The market. I go every week, they're open. Sunday. Her hands stilled at her sides. I did not plan Sunday. I believed her. That was the thing. I believed her in the specific way you believe someone when they are telling you something that does not help them, and telling you anyway. "If this keeps going," I said, "you have to trust that telling me the truth is worth more than managing the outcome." "I know. You can't calculate what I get to know. I understand that. I'm not saying I'm fine with what happened at the beginning. I would not believe you if you said that," she said, which was almost exactly what I would have said, and I knew then that we were already past the part where I could stay cleanly angry. "I need to know something," I said. "Ask, when did it stop being about the consulting question?" She thought about it. Really thought, not performing thinking. "The 3rd morning on the train," she said. "You told me you read the piece of Utrecht, and it was still settling 3 days later." I realized I had not thought about my firm's project in at least a week. I looked at the shelf, then at her. "Okay," I said. She waited. "We go from here," I said. "That's all I've got. That's all I need," she said. She picked the book back up from the shelf. Not the one she had been holding before. A different one. She looked at the cover for a second, then handed it to me. "You should read this one next," she said. "It'll take a few days to settle." I took it. I looked at it. I put it under my arm. "Same car Monday?" I said. Thea picked up her own copy from the shelf. 7:42, she said. And this time I knew, from the way she said it, that she had already decided she meant it.